Hello everyone, good afternoon. It is Sarah Shipton here from Scrapbooking with Sarah, and I'm coming live to you today on Tuesday, September 23rd with this week's Technique Tuesday. So we have another double page scrapbooking layout that I'm sharing with you this week. We are creating a bottom border tucked in technique on our double page layout. You can see that there is a single page layout here. We are on page 30 of the Reflections How-To Pattern Scrapbook Program. This is an old book that I had away on my shelf, and we are getting back to basics with our scrapbooking. So I'm super excited to share this layout with you today because we're going to be creating a tucked in bottom border. And I have to admit that I was a little like, oh my gosh, because we sort of do the same. I noticed, like, we've done bottom border now for, this is the 4th, 5th or 6th week in a row. And it's kind of like, oh my gosh, how can I show you guys different things or exciting techniques without boring you at the same time and making this bottom border technique still look really fun. And you know what? I actually have been reminded that the traditional kind of basic scrapbooking patterns so far have been my favorite. And I think that goes to show with the amount of interaction and engagement we are having in our Facebook group at the moment, and the amount of entries that are being done. I think you ladies are also really loving the back to basics scrapbooking patterns as well. So thank you so much for participating. And thank you for joining in on our weekly lives and our challenges as well. So special hello today to Pauline. I can see that Pauline has popped on here live. If I don't say a big hello to you, it's just because I can't see your name here in the bottom of the comments. I still send you lots of scrapbooking love. Okay, so double page scrapbook layout today. So to get started with, you are going to need 2 sheets of coordinating designer series paper or cardstock. I have opted with 2 sheets of coordinating designer series paper, which you will hear me reference as DSP for short, from the Peaceful Days, actually no, it's called the Peaceful Garden designer series paper. So I am featuring the Peaceful Days scrapbooking workshop kit, but you can also coordinate that scrapbooking workshop kit with the Peaceful Garden Suite collection. So the paper that I'm using today is actually not paper that you get in your scrapbooking workshop kit. I did buy an additional packet of the designer series paper, and you can see that this pattern actually, it's been covered mostly by the papers and the photos, but that's actually one tip that I want to point out straight off the bat. When you are doing a layout like this, where you've got this bottom border, and you can see here my photo orientation, I've opted for 6 portrait 4x6 inch photos running left to right across my layout here. And then I've snuck on some little 4x4 inch ones here as well with a flip flap. Because you're going to be covering much of the base of your scrapbook pages, you want to have your, maybe a cardstock base would be beneficial. Or if you're going to opt for some designer series paper, maybe a paper that is probably a bit softer or more muted would be beneficial, as opposed to one that's super busy. And in fact, I almost did think about, because we're covering it with this 5-inch strip running along the bottom here, I did almost think about cutting off my base page at about here and just sticking these 2 bits of paper together and making that my base. So that's just a little tip there for you. You might have a sheet of designer series paper and you really love the pattern, and of course, because I've used both sheets, I would need to buy another whole packet of this paper if I wanted to use this pattern or this pattern again. Okay, so if you've got a paper that you really love, when you're going to be covering it with a 5-inch strip here, you could potentially cut this base page probably about 1 inch under, so then you've got this paper that's stuck on over top, you've got something for it to grip onto. And with this particular technique, this is called the tucked in technique. With this particular technique, you need to make sure that you've got enough designer series paper or base page of your cardstock underneath the tucked in portion, so these photos that are tucked in have got something to grip onto. Okay, so that is my tip for you right off the bat in terms of selecting your base pages for this particular scrapbook layout. So one of the colors in the Peaceful Garden suite is Basic Beige. Let me grab my catalogue just here very quickly. Basic Beige. And you can see that this is a very, very light, that's the color here. It's almost like a very light gray, okay? So I thought that that color worked perfectly for the colors in my photos. The second cut that you're going to do is you can just use either one sheet of designer series paper or one sheet of 12 by 12 inch cardstock for this, because you're going to cut this at 5 inches, or in my example here, which I have also taken from the pattern, I've actually torn mine at 5 inches. So I put my 12-inch bit of paper on my mat just to, you know, get that 5-inch mark. And then I tore my paper at 5 inches. And then I turned the paper around so I had the straight edge here. And then I've torn that at 5 inches as well. So I've actually ended up with a 2-inch strip that would have been in the middle of this that I've torn, okay, which I have left over. And that was because I needed my edges to be straight, because those two bits of paper are going to go flush onto the bottom of your base page, okay? So you can certainly get away with one sheet of either cardstock or designer series paper. You want to tear one piece at 5 inch and then another piece at 5 inches as well. And then for this strip running through the middle here, you're going to cut that at 2 inches. So I've opted for cardstock over the top. So I've got pattern paper, and then my plain cardstock over the top. But I have embossed that with the exposed brick 3D embossing folder, and I'm going to be demonstrating that to you today, as well as the tucked in technique. Okay, I've opted for pecan pie for my color cardstock there, and that's the original pecan pie, not the lighter side of the pecan pie, because all of our 12 by 12 inch cardstock is two-tone. I was obviously looking for colors that went in with my photos, so I might share a little bit about that with you now. These photos were taken in Brooklyn in New York City at a location called Dumbo. And let me tell you girls, when I posted this layout yesterday, I was really surprised at the amount of messages I got, or like the laughing face emojis. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not calling me or my husband Dumbos. Dumbo actually stands for Down Under Manhattan Bridge Overpass. So this is the Manhattan Bridge that goes from Brooklyn over to New York City. And this bridge just underneath my flip-flap here, this is the Brooklyn Bridge. So we actually walked from Manhattan across the Brooklyn Bridge, and then down and around to this photo location, which is a very iconic spot for lots of tourists. As you can see here in this particular photo here, there's lots of tourists in the background, and here also as well. This is a very iconic spot to stand and take photos, primarily because you can get this gorgeous shot of the Manhattan Bridge overpass, but it is in line with these buildings. And in fact, this brown iconic building here, I'm obsessed with New York City, and I put that down to all of the shows that I watched back in the days. So this was a series called Gossip Girl that I was obsessed with, and this building actually featured in the series, and it's where one of the families lived. So needless to say, I had this iconic photo spot on my bucket list for some time, and it was very exciting to actually be able to go there. This gorgeous cobblestone streetway you can see here in this photo as well, with the gorgeous cobblestones. And looking back over the Brooklyn Bridge where we just walked from. So that is what Dumbo actually stands for. I have cut my title out using the party alphabet letters. So I'm just going to bring them into camera here for you so you can see what I have done with my party alphabet letters. I've actually put them onto some 5x7 inch magnetic sheets. So you will need 4 to fit all of the alphabet, and then your punctuation and international letters. You'll need 4 sheets of these, and I've basically just kept them in the original packaging that they were in, and it just helps me to make sure that they are protected. This was obviously a big item to invest in. A little tip for you when you're cutting these letters is to trim your cardstock at 2.5 inches, and you're better off to get best use of your cardstock. You're better off to line your letters vertically so you can get best use out of your paper if you cut those cardstock strips at 2.5 inches. And I have opted for, this is Secret C cardstock, but I have gone with the lighter side of Secret C instead of the darker side. So this is the Secret C cardstock here. So you can see that this is the original side of Secret C, and if we turn that over, we've got a lighter side. It almost looks like a very dark grey. So my colour scheme I've gone with is the Pecan Pie Secret C, and then a little bit of the basic beige to coordinate with the colours in my photos here. So I'm going to, and I've got some flip flaps over the top of these photos here. So I've opted for some 4x6 inch photos running left to right across my layout. And then I've got 2 photos in the middle here, which I've matted on the Secret C cardstock. And I've actually popped them up using my Stampin' Dimensionals. I'm going to slide this one out of the memory protector just so we can get a better look at this one. So with the tucked in technique, I've tore my sheet of designer series paper at 5 inches, and then to stick it down, I've just put adhesive kind of like along the bottom and the sides here, and I've left no adhesive on this top bit, because what you want to do is you want to tuck your photos in and underneath that designer series paper first, and then you can lift it up and you can put your adhesive underneath it. I love this tucked in technique, and in fact I thought, oh my gosh, is this going to be too I guess beginner for you girls, or too basic for you? But the really cool thing that I loved about this technique is these 2 photos had lots of people standing in the bottom here, and I didn't want to trim the photo down. I wanted to keep it 4x6 inch, but obviously by tucking that photo in and underneath that paper, I was able to cover up all of the people that I didn't want in my photo, and I'm really just focusing now on the bridge and the building here. I've put one of my favorite photos over the top, and you can opt to tuck all of your photos underneath if you wanted to. But I've got these 2 sort of on a little bit of an angle, and then I've got the middle one centered and straight, matted with the Stampin' Dimensionals. And I've actually popped this middle one up and over my designer series paper that the other photos are tucked in, just to give a little bit of a differentiation there. And you will see here that these photos, I've not tucked them. Don't worry so much if you opt to do the portrait as well. Don't worry that this is not going to be, you know, even with the other photos that you've tucked underneath. The only reason these have gone further in, probably about another 1/2 inch in more, is because I wanted to cover up these people in the bottom of my photos. These 2 here, I've tucked in underneath as well, and then same again, I've picked one of my favorite photos. I just love that photo. I think it's perfect, and you can see why I've opted to go with the Secret C and the Pecan Pie, because this bridge is almost like a very dark grey, or like a dark cloud cover almost even as well. So favorite photo, I've popped that one on some cardstock, and I've lifted that with my Stampin' Dimensionals, which are one of my favorite things to use. You can get these self-adhesive foam mounts. You can get them in just the normal size, or you can get them in the mini Stampin' Dimensionals as well. You just peel and stick them on, peel the self-adhesive backing off, and they're foam, so they stick down really easily as well, okay? For the bottom of my layout, I've got these 2-inch strips that have run through. I have used the exposed brick 3D embossing folder for this. Now, this is still an embossing folder that you can purchase in my online store. And I love this for, I've used this quite a lot of times, especially with exposed brick in building photos. I love architecture and old buildings. Now, this Stamp and Cut and Emboss folder, it's a 3D embossing folder, so it's a little thicker than just your standard embossing folder, and it measures 6 by 6 1/4. So because I had this 12-inch strip here, what it meant that when I ran it through my embossing folder, I actually ran it through vertically, so I did have these longer pieces sticking out, but it meant that I then had to line up where I embossed the first 6-inch part and then moved the cardstock along. It did mean that I ended up with a gap of about 1/4 of an inch where I've met the 2 pieces to emboss. So I have covered this with the M as best as I could. Initially I had this off center and I wasn't happy with the off centerness, and so I lifted all my letters and moved it over. Now, because I'd already put the Stampin' Dimensionals on, I actually tore my cardstock, and I don't know if you can see in the video there, but I was so bummed because then obviously you could see the white core of the cardstock. Enter my Stampin' markers. All I did was pull out my Pecan Pie Stampin' marker, and I actually blended over the top of the white core, so it was covered. If you look really closely, you can see it. But if you're looking at the naked eye, it's probably not even going to be noticeable once it's in my memory protector and in my album. So that's just a little tip for you. Now, I didn't include the Stampin' markers, Stampin' Write markers as one of the items that I listed, but I will actually go back and amend that and add the link to that in the comments below after I post this video. These Stampin' Write markers are being retired, so they are a while supplies last item, and in fact I didn't even check before I went live today whether to see these were still available for sale, but you can use them obviously as markers. They're a water-based dye ink. You can use them for journaling or colouring, as I have done in this example here. So I am going to demonstrate the embossing folder to you today, only because the technique I was sharing was this tucked in technique, and I'm thinking, well, there's not really much to demonstrate here because it's quite self-explanatory. You're going to have your base page, you're going to stick this piece of paper over the top of your base page, not put adhesive on here, tuck your photos in, and then stick your paper back over the top, okay? So that's pretty self-explanatory there, and I didn't think you really needed me to demonstrate that to you, so I thought, well, I can demonstrate something else to you today instead. Now, you might be wondering where these little cityscape icons have come from. Well, let me share with you that they have actually come from one of the kits in the kit collection, which is called City Sites. And in fact, this particular kit is in the last chance product section of my online store as we speak, and it's been reduced to, I think off the top of my head, $29.40. So it is a card making kit in the kit collection, but the reason I bought this card kit last year was because I had some other photos of New York that I wanted to scrapbook, and I'm going to share them with you today. And there was no cityscape stamp set or paper or anything that was going to coordinate with my photos. So I saw this kit and I thought, well, hang on a second, why can't I use the stamp set and the products that are in this kit on a scrapbook page? And I will share with you what I did with that. But these were my leftovers, and I was willing to spend, well, I spent more than the $29 because the kit's now reduced. I was willing to buy that kit just for this stamp set because I wanted to use it on my scrapbook layout, and there wasn't anything else that was convenient. So you can see these are card bases here that I've cut out and used. And I obviously will keep the stamp set because I can use that on other layouts like I have done here today. And the particular kit, as you can see, came with like a circle, a pre-cut circle, and then also came with the pre-cut cityscape outline, which I then stamped inside there, and I had one of those left over. So what I've done here is I just cut it in half, and I've tucked the longer piece under the letter D and the smaller piece at the other end over the letter O, and that's all I've done for my embellishing, other than the hues of blues. I always get that. That's a tongue tie, let me tell you. The hues of blues flowers, which are part of the Peaceful Garden Suite, and I've stuck them on here as my little bling. I didn't think that this needed a huge amount of embellishing, because I've got my pattern DSP here, I've got embossing through the cardstock here, and really there actually wasn't much room left to embellish once I've added all my 4x6 inch photos. So don't feel that you need to fill, you know, blank or available spaces with stamped and pre-cut images or with stickers. It can just be the focus on these beautiful photos, the gorgeous bright blue sky and the clouds, the contrast of this building against the sky. I just love it, and I don't want to cover that necessarily with other stamped embellishments or stickers, okay? So let's slide this back into the memory protector. So the M has covered this bit where I've joined here, and of course I had to put a photo over the top of that, so I've cut that at 4x4 inches. And then I'm just going to slide this back into the memory protector so I can show you what I have done with my flip flaps. I've used a 4x6 inch flip flap here. Now, of course, because the flip flap goes on over the outside of the memory protector, I couldn't tuck that down inside the paper. So it looks like it's, you know, it's not as obvious that we've used this tucked in technique here until you flip the flip flap open. I had to use this photo because a yellow New York City school bus came past. I was like, oh my gosh, that's literally so iconic. So I had to snap that. And in fact, in my photo here where I'm looking back towards Brooklyn Bridge, you can see the school bus going down its way there. I was like, oh my gosh, that's like the coolest thing ever, because we don't actually have school buses where I live. We have public transportation, or if the kids got a private school, they have like a private school bus. It's not these really cool yellow New York City school buses like you see in the movies and on the TV shows, right? So coming back to my little 4x4 inch flip flap, what I did here for my journaling, let me take that out of the flip flap, is I have cut a piece of the pecan pie cardstock at 4x4 inches, and then I've stuck that onto the back of one of my photos. This is my husband Darren looking at the building of the bridge. I've got a photo of him from behind. And then this is actually the inside of the Peaceful Greenery 3D embossing folder. You can buy a die cut, which actually cuts that out. It's not a set that I'm going to be investing in. So all I did here was, this was actually the embossed piece that I demonstrated to my customers at my workshop on the weekend. I turned that over because the raised edge of the outside of this inside bit, this middle bit, which you can stamp on or you can cut out with the coordinating die cut, I've literally just fussy cut that around the raised edges, and then I've used this to do my journaling with my Stampin' Up! 0.4 black journaling pen. And then I have stuck that onto this embossed piece using my Stampin' Dimensionals, and then just some little hues of blues flowers, a little bit of bling just to finish that off. And I'm super happy with that. I think that's so cute. And I wanted to hide the journaling box, so I actually put the journaling box underneath, and then I've got this other gorgeous photo on the top. So actually a shout out to my customer Jill, because she did this exact same technique on the weekend at Scrapbooking, and she did show me. I forgot about it, and then I've done the same thing, and then I've realized today in our Facebook group, look Jill, we are twinning. Isn't that so fun? Okay, so that is pretty much it for my layout and all of the beautiful products that I have used on there. Let me do a quick example of the exposed brick 3D embossing folder with one of my favorite tools, my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, which I just cannot live without. And because this is a 3D embossing folder, I need to use plate number 1 and plate number 4. The other reason I love it is because it has all the instructions right here on the plates. So girls, you cannot mess it up. And if you do, it doesn't matter because you can use it on something else. So this is just some pecan pie cardstock I had cut already, left over in my bag. I'm putting that in the middle of my 3D embossing folder. And then we're going to create a sandwich specifically for use with the 3D embossing folders. I need plate number 1 as my base. I'm going to put my embossing folder in between, and I'm going to sandwich that in between plate number 1 and plate number 4. And we are going to run that through my Stamp and Cut and Emboss. And then you can see this gorgeous texture up close. Oh my gosh, I just love it. I can't even deal. Now, because this is a 3D embossing folder as well, and I'm using it with my two-tone cardstock, keep in mind you might get some of the white core of the paper fiber showing up on your embossed piece, which is okay. It's like, it looks cool and rustic. And you know what? That's the whole point of this exposed brick 3D embossing folder. It's actually meant to look like that. So isn't that so cool? And you want to make sure, so here's a little tip for you. The Stampin' Up logo is the piece of the cardstock, because you're using two-tone, depending on what side you want embossed. The Stampin' Up, if you put your cardstock in face up with the colour that you want, that's going to be the embossed piece. So this is your positive, and if you turn over, that's going to be your negative. Okay, and you can use either side, but I like the embossed piece up top because I love that textured look. Now, I just wanted to quickly show you the other scrapbook layout that I was referring to you earlier, where I have used the cityscapes. So this was the kit. You actually make the cards, but I bought the kit. I made one of each card so I could have for display. I bought the kit because I wanted to create this cityscape layout, and I have done that. These were the card bases, which I just cut down and made my paper strip through here. And then I've used oh my gosh, I can't think of the name of this die cut. Oh, something of nature. Spotlight on Nature dies. I've used my Spotlight on Nature dies, and I've cut out some circles again using the card bases and also the envelopes. And then I've used the cityscape here and the cityscape here, and then just coordinated it up with matching cardstock, smoky slate, misty moonlight, and I think this might have been boho blue. So the colours here are very similar to the colours in this particular layout here, and you can see why I absolutely love it so much. So just to show you some of the remaining paper from the designer series, paper from Peaceful Garden. You've got this beautiful dove print. This is either side, so I've already, oh no, actually this one will be the brown on the back. Okay, so I've already used one sheet there for my tearing, and then this one is double-sided. This one's double-sided, so you can see you've got some patterns, some sheets which are patterned, and others you've got this gorgeous muted color. So you've got a little bit of variety here. I love these florals with the whites and the blue, and then the Secret Sea and the little North Star, even like the little starlight or the sprinkles. So, you know, peaceful days, peaceful garden. I want to give a shout out to my customer Mel, who actually used the doves on a layout she did on the weekend on a layout of the World Trade Center from New York City, and she inspired me so much that I put in an order to print my photos of the World Trade Center and use the peace doves on that layout as well. Again, the colors in the buildings, the outside of the memorial and the monuments, you've got the gorgeous grays and the basic beiges. So I'm definitely looking forward to creating something very special and memorable with those dove papers for the World Trade Center photos that I've got to scrapbook. I hope that this has been a helpful Technique Tuesday for you. I look forward to seeing your tucked in technique girls this week. Thank you very much for watching and can't wait to see what you come up with. Have a great week, everyone, and thank you for watching. Bye for now.